All right, I will call the Thursday, February 12th Assembly Work Session to order. We'll begin with citizen comments. This is our one opportunity for citizen comments during the work session, but there'll be additional opportunities for comments during the special meeting following today's work session. For those who wish to call in, the local number is 907-486-3231. Toll free is 1-855-492-9202. Please turn off your radio or any listening device to prevent feedback. For those in the room who wish to speak under citizen comments, please come to the podium and sign in. Turn on the microphone and make sure the green light is on before speaking, and please speak directly into the mic. And also state your name for the record. Address all remarks to the assembly as a body and not to any member.
My name is Aaron Oswalt, and I was born and raised in Kodiak, and I'm coming in here today to speak about the draft final regional solid waste management plan. I downloaded and looked at this plan over about 2 hours today, and I formally request that the public have an ability to comment on this plan. So what I found in looking at this is a lot of problems with the economic models. It's basically like the thumb has been placed on the incinerator option, and I really don't have a preference on any option, but when you go back and you look at their economic models, there are numbers that aren't supported by anything in the report. In other words, they're just numbers on an Excel spreadsheet. There's no explanation for why they've picked certain things. This happens as well with the export model. A $350 ton shipping cost is noted, but there's no references. What they do have a reference for is a quote for the incinerator. Now, the concern I have is that Kodiak, if you're unaware, we have one of the highest per ton costs for tipping. It's $400, but you wouldn't know that compared to other communities in Alaska unless you went to page 616. The one bit where they talk about other communities and where they've mentioned that other Alaskan communities like Sitka, Ketchikan, and Skagway export their waste. They don't say what those charges are, and they aren't in this particular table. Where, for instance, Unalaska, which has a $364 a ton rate compared to us. So why am I here saying all this? Because I'm really excited about solid waste? No. Because I grew up right next to the dump. My father had the property along with his partner at the time that was Timberline Incorporated. And I know a lot of the history of the dump in this community. And I know how the baler was sold to this community, which was, we're going to extend the life of the dump. We'll save money. That didn't happen, folks. So I'd like to see, like I'm sure all citizens would, our rates come down. We're paying some of the highest rates here in Alaska. But none of that can happen, and I can't make a comment unless I have the ability to comment. And I don't want it just to be me. There's only been 2 business days that this will go out for comment, and then it's back to them. And I think that's unacceptable, considering the ramifications for the community contained in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. While our next commenter comes up, I'm going to say those numbers one more time. If you want to call in, local number is 907-486-3231 and toll free 1-855-492-9202.
Hi, my name's Marion Owen, and I remember I want to speak on the Regional Solid Waste Management Plan. And I just saw it this evening listed in the newspaper, so I didn't have 2 hours, so my hat's off to him. Some 25 years ago, give or take, I was on the SWAB, the Solid Waste Advisory Board, and I remember Jim Fisk, who was running the landfill, pounding on the table saying, this is going to last for 100 years. So here we are. I too am not in favor of incineration. Many communities are actually moving away from that just because it's expensive. You do have toxic ash, and it actually undermines recycling and composting efforts, and that is to keep organics out of the landfill. I really applaud the borough for moving forward with this plan because it's sweeping, this kind of keeping organics out of the landfill is sweeping across the United States, if not the world. My home state originally of Washington State, they are now faced with prohibiting every organic material, from food scraps to lawn clippings to restaurant food, out of the landfill by 2030, period. Like, we don't do this anymore. So this is a long time coming. I think there's other things we can do before we go to incineration, and that is like source reduction. Don't create waste in the first place. Reuse and repair, that's another thing that's really coming up in communities. Recycling, we know about that. Organic diversion, the 40% that ends up in the landfill. And why is that a problem? Because organics that are putrefying, buried in a landfill, create methane gas, which is 30 times worse than CO2. It's one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases, is burying organic materials. And then construction and demolition recycling. And then maybe towards the bottom of the list is that waste to energy or incineration. And the very last one is landfilling. So if I could say I dream a world that would be with no landfills. Just imagine if everybody couldn't put anything in the landfill anymore. Wouldn't we get creative? So I would just like you to reconsider the incineration option. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Any calls? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Scott Arndt, and I saw it on the agenda here, the Cook Inlet Regional Citizens Advisory Council. Currently, I'm the borough rep on that, and just wanted to let it be known, nobody had asked, I am interested in continuing to serve for the borough on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Larry Van Dale, and I am currently the co-chairman of the Solid Waste Advisory Board. I guess de facto chairman now because we've lost so many members. I don't have any prepared remarks, but I would just like to say that, as we all know, we've had a lot of turnover in the borough staff with regard to the landfill. Had a lot of turnover here on the assembly. We've got a lot of turnover on the SWAB. In fact, I believe we still have 2 or 3 vacant positions there right now. But that being said, I feel strongly that if we work together, we can make this work out. I was involved with the borough staff with the Jacobs Engineering program. I can work with you guys individually or as a SWAB member any way you want. And I'm offering the services of SWAB to be more than just let's get some trinkets out there and get people educated about recycling. I mean, or I am, but I think the whole group is willing to dig in with you guys and figure out how to make this work as a community. So, Marion, we've got openings. And I could use your help, Anybody you know that wants to be on SWAB and wants to dig in like that, please let them know we have these vacancies right now. And I guess I have to say the word bear. I'm not allowed to leave without saying the word bear. But anyway, thank you very much for what you guys do. And please, let's work together and not rush this forward, but do it in the Kodiak way of community service and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else? No calls? Okay, moving on to managers' comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I spent much of the week reclassifying the positions of 8 of our staff members, finalizing what, and Nova can tell you that it's a job and a time-intensive endeavor, as she just did it for the clerk. So all of our landfill employees have been reclassified. We did have an in-house applicant for the Baylor supervisor job, and the offer is out for them. Today I attended a property tax work group. AML is looking at what other states are doing to incentivize long-term housing. And in some cases that decentivizes short-term housing by charging different mill rates for different groups of people and different values of homes. In one of the models we looked at today, if your home was valued over 1.5 million, you paid a huge amount of property tax. And if your house was below 50,000, you paid like 0.75. They had a really huge spread, and it's a really interesting model that I'm excited to talk to Seema when she's back and see what we can bring forward and look at that. We are announcing our Citizens Academy tomorrow to begin on March 10th. This week, KAB received a question about Public Notice and Open Meetings Act. I wanted to thank Nova I just forwarded her the email, help. And she changed the entire website and the way we notice meetings that aren't regular meetings or work sessions or boards or commissions or service areas, but stuff when we have like open houses for for community development and the comprehensive plan or the hazard mitigation plan. There's a new way to notice those, and there's a new way for people to get notices for those on the website that she fixed in one day. So thank you, Nova. And the person that had asked already had written back and said thank you. So that's a great change for our transparency. Our next work session on February 26th is when we'll set the timeline for budget review. And so far, the only thing on there is that June 10th is our deadline for that to be passed. In finance, the foreclosure process has started for 2025 taxes. We should be printing the delinquent list in the newspaper over a period of 4 weeks that begins on February 20th. If you have questions, you can call the finance department at 486-9324 for a payoff amount. In community development, the Planning and Zoning Commission met last night to review the packet for their regular meeting next week. There are 3 rezone requests included in next week's meeting. The comprehensive plan, or what we call Plan 2045, has a arts, culture, and history survey available and an environmental survey that's available. When staff is working on those, and then our final one is an intergovernmental cooperation survey. It should be ready to be published at the end of February. After that one, we get to start drafting that plan because all the public input portion will be over. In information technology, they're continuing their work on a state and local cybersecurity grant program and working on their budget. If software is used throughout the borough, it comes out of the IT's budget, and so we're like, add this, add that at the last minute, so Fred is being very patient with us. We met with Long Technologies this morning, a big group of people, all the stakeholders, on their upcoming contract to provide monitoring software for KFRC and the KAB main building systems. They're also reviewing staff role responsibilities and working on reclassifying their jobs there because Mitchell Davidson is going to be departing in mid-March off to a new adventure, and we're looking to move our current employee up into his job before we hire new people in. I already talked to you about cybersecurity. We are removing problematic clients of KIB public Wi-Fi systems. We have people park outside of the building and just download like crazy. So we're working on how to control that. In assessing, last time I told you we had 4 late file applications. We are up to 8. Good cause exemptions have been scheduled to be heard by the Assembly on May 21st. Instead of getting the normal letter that you get in the mail for your notice of value, it will be a postcard. So please keep an eye out for a postcard instead of a letter this year when it comes to notice of values. We have the same 2 exemption appeals and the same 2 exemption reconsiderations as we have. We do have a deadline coming up on February 18th. SEMA will be doing a consideration for St. Mary's, and we have a letter of reconsideration due to the Calvary Chapel Bells Flats Church by March 2nd. In engineering facilities, I already mentioned something about long technology, but they were here today. We got to meet the staff. We had projects, maintenance, and IT all in the room to have a stakeholder meeting. And Fred got to ask a lot of questions about how those third parties were accessing our system. He does a very good job of monitoring who is in our servers. You guys passed the solid waste code last week, and we have a continued work on the RFP. You're going to see that on February 25th. We've been talking about the community pool and the destructive testing. We had a meeting this week with JYW and asked to kind of put a fire under that so we can get that going. So that design should be to us soon. Nothing changed in our elevators. In our fuel spills, we do have an invitation to bid out. It is advertised on the Borough website, and it's in the Kodiak Daily Mirror on February 3rd, 9th, and 16th. A mandatory pre-meeting is scheduled for February 20th at 10 a.m., and bids are due for March 3rd, on March 3rd at 2 o'clock. That is the super sacks of soil that we have out at the landfill. For Providence Kodiak Island Medical Center, they were very happy that we passed the stuff that we did last week, and they have 4 new things to go on to HFAB, so we can continue getting that design and work done for them. At the leachate treatment plant, we have a laboratory contract that expired. Our environmental services employee, who we don't have, so is default by me, missed that one. So we reached out to them to get that extended through June 30th this year. The contractor agreed, except they don't want to do the courier service anymore. And so project staff, Patricia, has worked with Carl to find out more information about courier services to be able to get the stuff from the airport to the laboratory while it's still fresh and a usable sample. Yesterday, we had some people from Phillips Scales come in and tell us that the last time that they did preventative maintenance on our scale at the landfill was 2014. So we started digging to find out if anyone else had done preventative maintenance on our scale since then, and unfortunately I cannot find any. So they bring over their weights, and they're here twice a year in March and September, so we're going to investigate. I told them they were here. I was like, it's over $500. I have to get multiple quotes. And the guy looked at me and said, good luck. And I said, okay. So I'm feeling they're probably the only ones that do it. They're over here frequently for Alaska Airlines because weight and balance is so important in aviation. And they also do all of our fish processing plants. So if we're not ready for them next month, we can get them in September, but we're going to add that to our preventative maintenance list. We're also doing landfill baler maintenance. We have 2 quotes, as you can see there. The second one did not have shipping, so until we get the shipping, I don't want to bring that forward to the assembly, so we know what we're signing up for. That's something that we do every 2 years, so it's been 2 years, so we're doing it again. The Industrial Pump Alaska, we're on site February 3rd. We have the removal and replacement of pumps 3 and 4. We have some issue with the lengths of the shaft. The way that they are right now, they may not be fully submerged at low tide. So we are working with the contractor to figure that out. And the page 7 is just so many small projects. So apartment lift station repairs, our fire alarm panel replacement in Port Lions. We're working on Harlequin Park updates and replacing Borough Park picnic tables. We've started the Port Lions school painting project. That's what we spent most of our time with our architect with this week. We're moving the underground storage tank at the annex building. We have the boiler gun replacements happening at North Star. The landfill is getting a new used oil burner replacement. And I know you're very aware of the stairs and picnic tables at Mill Bay Beach. The only new one on there, and you'll notice I didn't name them any color when we talked about it, so that's a good way. The leachate treatment plant has a citric acid dosing skid. I didn't know what that was either, so I had to have pictures sent to me, and it's how they get citric acid into the system safely. It is rusted and falling apart, so they're looking at getting that replaced. Upcoming meetings. We have HFAB on February 24th, our Solid Waste Contract Committee on February 25th, and Architectural Review Board is meeting on March 3rd. I left a note page for notes for you in there accidentally, but you could totally use it for that. And then I also included West Side Kodiak saltwater as are being closed to king salmon fishing, and it shows the area that it's going to be closed from May 1st to June 30th. That's not normal stuff that I put in, but Mark Hickey sent it to me, so I thought it seemed like the right thing to do. So again, thanks to Nova for clearing up that issue that we had brought up, and with that, I'm ready to answer any questions.
Any questions from the assembly? Mr. Ames?
I see the king salmon closure thing. Do you know anything about commercial fishing in that area?
I am only aware of what that letter says, sir.
Thank you.
But I think Assemblymember Whiteside will be able to fill any gaps if you have questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
For any inquiries for any Kodiak area salmon fishing, Mr. James Jackson with our local ADF&G office is the person to ask. There will likely be some challenging scenarios for the commercial guys.
Sure. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Amy. All right, let's move on into our work session agenda. First on the list is the Regional Solid Waste Management Plan presentation. Manager Williams, Patricia.
Thank you, Mayor Griffin. Patricia is here tonight, and we have some folks online that'll let her introduce that helped her work on the plan. Look, they just took their mutes off, so they know that I'm talking about them. That's always a good sign. As you have seen, it is a very long report, which is why we sent it to you as soon as we got it. But I am happy to announce that the slideshow is only 20 slides, so we will not drag you through all of that. Our subject matter experts are online if you do have specific questions. And as we heard in public comment from a couple of different people, there are going to be questions from the community. And I just wanted to point out that this is a grant that was awarded from Denali Commission for $500,000. Half of it went to CANA for the rural areas, and half of it went to us for this plan. This is just meant to be educational. It doesn't need to be approved. You don't have to pick a path. This is just to inform the discussion as we talk about the landfill. You're going to see requests for creations of new cells, and if we don't want to expand the landfill, it would be solutions like this that we look at. So that's what this is meant for, and with that, Patricia, I'll let you take it over.
Okay. Good evening. Tonight we're presenting the updated Regional Solid Waste Management Plan, developed in partnership with us, Kodiak Area Native Association, the Solid Waste Advisory Board, and the community at large. This project was funded through a grant from the Denali Commission. This plan represents the first comprehensive update in more than 17 years to our island-wide solid waste management practice review, spanning both the road system and 6 Alaska Native villages. Before leaving the borough, Jenna Hassinger, who championed this effort, emphasized that her vision was that this plan would be a living document, a working tool that is actively used to guide decisions in how Kodiak solid waste is addressed in the future. That purpose is especially important now as staff and the Solid Waste Contract Committee are developing the request for proposals for our next solid waste contract. The plan incorporates extensive review by stakeholders of the project, community feedback, waste characterization studies, surveys, and economic modeling. It identifies 8 priority diversion incentives and includes a schedule to ensure the plan remains up to date. So as you listen tonight, I know we're not really making a whole lot of decisions, but I encourage the assembly to consider whether you'd like to provide direction to staff to better formulate the future contract, or any solid waste management practices that align with any long-term community goals or initiatives that are presented tonight. The Jacobs team is online and will walk through some of the major findings and recommendations. So I'll now turn it over to Mr. Corey Hines, the Jacobs primary project manager, and Mr. Dan Pitzler, Jacobs lead decision science, lead for decision science. Thank you. And if you have any questions at the end, they'll be here and I'll be here. So, Corey, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Patricia. Good evening, everyone. I'm Corey Hines, the Jacobs Project Manager. I'm going to turn off my camera and share the screen and get going here. Okay. Okay, can everyone see that first slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, very good. Okay. So Borough staff structured this scope of work to include data gathering via the waste composition study and public input via surveys. I'm going to summarize those findings, but first I want to explain and show results of the economic modeling for disposal options for the Kodiak road system, because the decision on how to proceed is getting time critical and the assembly will likely have some decision making role in that. So in this plan, we recommend alternatives to divert materials, organics and recyclables from landfill disposal. But it's the disposal of the rest of the material that's at question here for the economic modeling. For that residual disposal, should the borough continue to bail in landfill or do something else? That's what we're getting at here. So we modeled 4 options, which I'll explain next. So these are the 4 options that we compared by estimating the present value cost over 30 years. I'll explain briefly each one here. Landfill is what's being done currently. It's continuing landfilling of the municipal solid waste and construction and demolition waste at the Kodiak landfill and separating metals for recycling. This option is going to require construction of cell 2 soon. Incineration means adding a pair of diesel-fired incinerators to reduce municipal solid waste, combustible municipal solid waste, to ash, and then landfilling that ash and continuing to landfill the construction demolition waste and continue to separate the metals. Export means closing the municipal solid waste portion of the landfill and shipping baled waste in containers to a landfill in the lower 48. Landfilling of construction and demolition waste will continue, and so would the separation of metals at the landfill. Aggressive diversion means banning the landfill of organics and recyclables, separating and composting organic waste, increasing the recycling efforts, and then landfilling the rest. So there's a lot of numbers on this slide. I'm going to go through and hit some of the highlights. We have also discussed our models in detail with staff, and we're also here to answer questions here at the end of this presentation. But what we did is we tallied life cycle costs for each alternative. Then we compared them using present value. That is, bringing all the future costs to present using the discount rate. The costs that are included in our models include design, permitting, capital, O&M, closure, and post-closure costs. So I'm going to do a quick review of the numbers, starting with the landfill column and then moving to the right. So in the landfill column, the design costs represent the design for cell 2. There's a minor permitting update that needs to be done periodically. There's The capital cost is for the construction of cell 2. There continues to be significant O&M for maintaining the baler, landfilling the bales, and operating the leachate treatment plant. And then there's the closure and post-closure costs. Moving to the right, the incineration includes design of a new building, a significant permitting effort, state and federal air permits, significant capital for the new building, then 2 incinerators and associated air pollution controls, reduced O&M because the borough would be landfilling ash and not baling, reduced operating cost at the leachate treatment plant, and then extending the landfill life, which reduces the closure and post-closure cost by pushing them out. Moving to the right again, the export, there's no design cost needed for that. There's the minor permitting. The capital cost is for a container loading system where bales would be loaded and pushed into containers. There's significant O&M with the fee per ton for the shipping and disposal and continuing landfilling of the construction and demolition debris. And then we have closure of the MSW landfill in the near term, so those costs are higher. The aggressive diversion scenario, that includes a design of a composting system for the organics, some minor permitting, capital costs for the composting system, and then O&M includes additional contract fees for organics collection, composting operations, and recycling, and continuing to operate the baler and the landfill for the rest of the materials that are not diverted. Under this scenario, landfill life is extended, so the closure and post-closure costs are pushed out and reduced. So here are the model results. The incineration option is the lowest 30-year present value and the lowest levelized tipping fee. Continued landfilling is the next lowest. Our recommendation is that the borough consider changing out the baler for an incineration system. The next step would be a thorough review and discussion of our assumptions and our models, contacting other municipalities and conducting due diligence for operations, engaging community acceptance. And I'll just quickly say here that our thumb is not on the incineration option here. When I first launched into this effort, I thought that the export model option was going to be the option that we should look at because the per ton cost is lower than, at $350 a ton, is lower than the current tipping fee. But that's not how it works out when you consider all the costs here. So this is something to be considered. Now I'm going to move on to the diversion initiatives. So this is an overview of the process that was used. I mentioned the waste characterization study. So there were, and then the survey and then the workshop. So these 3 actions were taken, and then these 8 key initiatives came out of it. So the waste characterization study was completed at the Kodiak landfill and also at Old Harbor and Port Lyon landfill in August. The results indicated that organic wastes were the highest percentage by weight at about 40%, and that cardboard and metal waste were also a significant portion at about 10 to 15%. The surveys were conducted and responses were received from Kodiak Island businesses, residents, villages, and waste and recycling service providers back in August. And and the purpose was to assess current waste and recycling practices and identify areas for improvement. In September then, Jacobs conducted a workshop with borough staff, landfill operations, CANA, and the SWAB to discuss the priorities and constraints of the current system and brainstorm ideas for improvement. So out of these 3 actions, we jointly developed these 8 initiatives, each of which we provided detailed recommendations for in our plan. So I'm going to step through these now. The first one is improving landfill diversion simply by better public outreach. What we found is that Kodiak really has a solid existing set of programs and opportunities for managing waste and diverting recyclables from the landfill disposal. Increased outreach is needed to explain and remind residents and our visitors what is expected and how to manage waste and recyclables via these existing programs. So this is a priority. Next is the illegal dumping. And addressing illegal dumping at the borough dump pads through enforcement and closure of some of the dump pads is needed. Borough staff has developed a reasonable plan to follow. Then we have organics or food, particularly food waste diversion. Data from our waste composition study indicated that food waste was the highest percentage by weight, going to the landfill. We proposed this initiative to divert food waste from Kodiak and village landfills through a combination of prevention, donation of food where applicable, and composting. On the road system, the largest single source of food waste going to landfill is from the larger grocery stores, so starting a dialogue with them on how to reduce their food waste should be the first step. Next is what we're calling universal cardboard and aluminum beverage can recycling. Data from the waste composition study indicated that these recyclables continue to be a significant percent of the waste going to landfill. Threshold provides recycling services. We recommend that Kodiak implement a landfill ban on the road system for cardboard and aluminum cans and get these materials to Threshold. Villages should continue to work with CANA and Backhaul Alaska to increase the recycling of cardboard and the aluminum cans. For scrap metal recycling, the existing program on the road system is working very well. The only recommendation that we have to improve this one is to evaluate the feasibility of any cost savings by combining scrap metal from the Coast Guard base. For the villages, it's clear that it's time for another major scrap metal recycling backhaul event as soon as possible. Perhaps a target of 2030 is reasonable or earlier. And then these events, these backhaul events where you bring a barge by each village and load the scrap, need to occur on approximately a 15-year cycle. In the past, these have been funded by grants, and the borough should look for ways for this to be a self-sustaining project. Programs such as collecting advanced disposal fees to help offset the costs. Glass reuse. A simple, low-cost program can be set up to divert glass from landfill via resident and commercial self-haul to centrally located bins. The bins can then be collected and hauled so that the glass can be crushed at the landfill and reused as landfill cover on the bales. A ban on landfill disposal of glass would make a significant difference in glass diversion and be a boost for this program. Fishnet recycling. We recommend that the borough encourage the fishing industry to continue to utilize Net Your Problem instead of landfilling the nets. And we recommend a coordinated outreach approach with Net Your Problem. One option is to establish an MOU with Net Your Problem and consider increasing the landfill tipping fee by, say, 20%, to provide an incentive to recycle the nets through Net Your Problem instead of sending them to the landfill. For the villages, we recommend encouraging the villages to use Backhaul Alaska to get the old nets here to Kodiak to Net Your Problem for recycling. And coordination is required with Net Your Problem before these nets are brought to them, not just to bring it and dump it. They need to find out what type of plastic it is. Next, the last initiative here is the bottle bill. Bottle bills are a system that has been confirmed to increase recycling rates of the single-use beverage containers through the deposit return schemes that we've seen in other states. But the bottle bill is a statewide effort. So it's not going to be something that is going to be Kodiak only. But Kodiak leaders should look for opportunities to work with other municipalities to develop legislation to support this. These programs work. Villages should be encouraged to participate in the Flying Cans program that's managed by Alaskans for Litter Prevention and Recycling, ALPAR, to recycle aluminum cans and plastic bottles. So we added some timelines for prioritizing these initiatives. So the first one is, the recommended order of implementation is exactly how I just presented them. So the first one, most important right now, is to consider the next option for disposal, because cell 1 is filling up fast and cell 2 needs to be designed and construction soon if landfilling is going to be the preferred option. Next one is the outreach for existing programs, because that's the low-hanging fruit to improve the whole system. Then we have addressing illegal dumping, needs to be the next priority, and then the diversion initiatives after that. And then finally, we have a recommended maintenance timeline for this plan. And we recommend that the regional solid waste management plan and waste composition studies be updated every 5 years. It doesn't need to be a complete update, but see if there are any things that have changed, any additional opportunities that have come along, and make updates and update any public outreach. And then data collection and tracking of landfill diversion and landfilling tonnage and different metrics should be conducted annually. And then public outreach and stakeholder engagement should also be conducted annually. So that's the last slide, and Dan and I are available for questions. I'm going to stop sharing now.
All right, thank you, Corey. Patricia, did you have anything to add? Okay. Thanks for this. This is obviously very a thorough, thorough report. As as an island, we're going to have to crack down on some of these things for sure. We know that it would take some investment, especially in terms of enforcement, if that's the way we decide to go. But as I understand it, the manager, ENF, you're not looking for specific direction from us today on anything. This is just advisory and to help us, plan in a way for what's coming next.
Much of what we do is gardening, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
We're planting seeds, and then
Yeah.
we'll see what comes of it in the future.
With that, I will open it up to the assembly. Are there any questions you have, information you need clarified, or definitions from our presenters today? Mr. Ames?
If the incinerator option is the chosen one, is there a reason why combustible construction waste is not going through the incinerator too?
Yeah, Mr. Ames, I'll take that one. It is an option to separate out combustible construction waste and send that through the incinerator. So that can be done. It's an extra step. Other communities that have decided to go this route with using an incinerator have made the decisions not to try to separate out that waste for reasons perhaps related to just the work that it would require to do the separation. But it's certainly possible, and that could certainly reduce the amount of construction demolition waste that would be landfilled. Yes.
I'll take Mr. Gardner, and then or did you have a follow-up to that, or is it a different question?
It's kind of a follow-up.
Okay.
I would just think that, like we can ban, if you're talking about banning aluminum cans and other things, we could demand the contractors separate all the wood and everything to be delivered and the non-combustible be in a separate container. Right now, we want them to separate the metal from the other. So I think it's a feasible thing to put much of the burden on the contractor. That's all. Thanks.
Mr. Gardner?
Under your aggressive diversion plan, I would be under the assumption that pretty much everything would be cheaper. So I guess I'm just curious why operation and maintenance is up so high to 142 million in that option.
Well, one of the reasons is that you still have to landfill the rest. That's really the main thing. You can divert a lot of the recyclables and a lot of the organics, but you're not going to divert everything. And so you're still going to need to operate the baler, run the leachate treatment plant, landfill the bales, cover the bales, all the stuff.
Thanks.
Mr. Whiteside?
Not necessarily a question, but is this an appropriate time just to share some thoughts on the topic?
Let's keep it brief. Yes.
I will do my best. Oh, my goodness. Okay. I think about this a lot. And so I guess the aggressive diversion, I'll speak fast. Aggressive diversion, that typically will require generating voluntary compliance. Mm-hmm. If we don't generate voluntary compliance from the community and it's mandated through a ban, then you have the burden of enforcement. Mm-hmm. How does that look? Do you have people going and looking through people's trash cans? How many people do you have to hire to do that? Forced compliance could also be done through, which I'm not advocating for any of these, I'm just throwing out my thoughts, as a transfer station where all refuse is sorted, all cans, bottles, anything that was discussed in that can be separated out. That also takes infrastructure and cost to develop infrastructure and to run a transfer station. But that's how you can do it without forcing the community to do it themselves, which I don't think is a viable option in our community. We have a lot of mixed feelings on voluntary compliance for separating our refuse here. It sounds like we have a lot of room for improvement with partnering up with our grocery stores. It's concerning to hear that they're one of the leading producers of organic waste, and I'm concerned about that for several reasons. But for the case of this topic, I think we should reach out to our grocery stores and we can figure something out. There has to be some room for compromise on diverting that waste if they're the ones who are billing our current cell. Incineration, at first glance, sounds like a decent idea, but I think the reality of that is the cost for maintenance and the discharge would likely not be welcomed from adjacent residents. So I don't know if, I guess maybe that's a question. It seems to me that the discharge from that level of incineration would likely create an uncomfortable atmosphere for adjacent residents.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Anytime there's a stack with something coming out of it, it causes concern with neighbors. The idea would be to have, very sophisticated air pollution controls on the incinerator. And if you look at the cost for the incinerators and the cost for the air pollution control systems in the quote that we got, the air pollution control systems are actually more expensive than the incinerators themselves. So there's bag houses and there's, air-to-air heat exchanger to cool it down and then catch the particulates and all these different things. And there'll be, extensive air permitting required and modeling and all that stuff. But it doesn't stop the fact that there's something coming out of the stack and there's neighbors that will be concerned.
Thank you. And I guess I'll just close quickly with one option we still have not been presented with, and it's been brought up continuously with previous and current members of Assembly, is what does a transfer station look like and how much would that cost? Thank you.
And to your note, Mr. Whiteside, about the grocery stores, I can't remember if it is Paris or the entire country of France, last year or very recently mandated that all grocery stores have to donate any food that is still, edible, that hasn't rotted. They have to donate it, or they're very heavily fined. Those Europeans. Okay, all right. Okay. Last word, Mr. Gardner.
And just comments to kind of go along with Bo, not a question. This is something that lands in my lap a lot as well. I'm on the Solid Waste Advisory Board with Mr. Van Dale. It had been brought up that I should check in with the managers at Walmart and Safeway, and we just haven't met in a while because there hasn't been much of a quorum, and that's been something that has been on my mind a lot lately coming out of the holidays. The other things that have landed in my lap with this, I had several people come to me and say that they'd love for us to open back up salvage out there. I know that's not going to make a huge difference, but every little bit helps. And then to my own mind, I mean, as far as the idea of forced compliance and voluntary compliance, I think we're at a point where we have to realize that if there's not a consequence for an individual for improperly disposing of their waste, we're all going to have a consequence as an entire island in the very near future. So whatever we do, I mean, we've got to get on it. And lastly, I've been thinking a lot about how we need to start some kind of community compost situation. I know that there's a lot of challenges there, specifically with bears and whatnot, but every step in the right direction. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ames.
At one point, it was mentioned about composting some of the organics. Was building such a facility to do that included in this project report with finances, or would that be an additional project?
Yeah, that was not included. A design of a compost system was not included, but what we did envision is an expansion of the existing biosolids composting system that's being operated by the city. We think it's feasible that another couple of bays would be added to that system, and then batches of the food waste would come through. They would use some of the existing mixing and shredding equipment on the front end, and then the food waste would go into these separate bays, so it's not commingled and mixed with that biosolids, but it would go into different bays, and some of the existing aeration of the piles could be used, and the biofilter could be used. And so our cost estimates for the composting capital cost was based on that concept. And I think some of those details are in the report.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Corey, and thank you, Dan, for coming in and presenting your work to us. We really appreciate your time.
Our pleasure. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up is a discussion of the vehicle registration taxes. Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From the last time we talked about this at the December 16th work session, I put together a timeline and included all of the ordinances for you so you could go see them yourself. It was in 1979 that we established the tax in lieu of a local ad valorem property tax. In 87, the tax was allocated to the area-wide school system. In fiscal year 2006, they adjusted both the rates for personal vehicles and commercial vehicles. In 2019, they changed the allocation from the area-wide school system to the school general obligation debt payments and a junk car removal program. And in 2021, they adjusted the rates for both personal and commercial vehicles again. All of those are in your packet. And then after all of those, there are a couple of graphs that show you, I think the first one you've seen before, the motor vehicle registration tax monthly collections from 2016 until the end of 2025. And then the new thing that we added was our annual general obligation bond debt service requirements. And you can see that some what those are looking like over the next few fiscal years. So that would be the information that hopefully you need to continue that conversation from December.
Yeah, thank you. So I think tonight, at least what I'm looking for, and maybe Manager Williams also, is some clarity on whether the Assembly wants to pursue any change that wouldn't take effect until 2028.
Any changes that we do inside of calendar year 26 would take place January 1st, 2028.
Yeah. So if we want to pursue any change that would take effect in 2028, and if so, whether we're willing to replace roughly a 0.4 mil equivalent in revenue, or whether we should keep the motor vehicle registration tax at all and just stop reopening the question every year. What problem are we trying to solve if our goal is to make it go away? What does that mean? Repeal the most recent iterations of it, the reduce rates, keep it, but stop reopening it. So let's see if we can come to some kind of clarity. Yes, Amy. Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, before we start, I just also like to point out that this tax is outside of MAPTR. And while you might not understand why that's freaking me out right now, the school district asked, which we'll get to next, and what MAPTR is this year, this money is not included inside of MAPTR, and so it's going to make a big difference in us being able to make ends meet over the next couple of years, in my opinion. Thanks.
Okay, any discussion? Yeah, Ms. Roberts and then Mr. Johnson.
So I've been thinking about this ever since it was brought up in December,
and personally, I would like to see it decrease, just as a citizen who has to pay that. It was quite a shock to me, registering a vehicle here for the first time, that it was $300. And I understand the state tax is usually a flat rate of $100, and then the extra goes to Kodiak. I went on the DMV website. I looked at every single municipality to see how much it would cost to register my car in each of those. Anchorage's MVRT is about half of Kodiak's. And so understanding that Anchorage has a much greater infrastructure demand than we do, how do they still maintain a lower rate? That was just pretty shocking to me, I guess, that Anchorage's was half as ours. They still have the same, or most municipalities still have the same age-based scale similar to ours, where increases, decreases based on your car's age, usually about $10. So I was when I was researching that, I was pretty surprised.
You asked a question in there. Was that, is that something you wanted to respond to, Amy?
Well, I don't know the answer to that directly, but I don't know so each municipality can direct where their tax is applied to. And so I don't know if they're using it the same way that we are.
Theirs was towards general fund.
Right, and so, and they also don't have a max allowable property tax, as I'm sure you've seen the memes online and stuff about how there's the Anchorage area is suffering from a new method of assessment. But for us, because ours goes directly towards bond debt and then that junk car program, I don't think that's apple to apples in comparison. Because just our bond debt is going to be different.
Have Mr. Johnson next.
Thank you. I'm really conflicted on it. I had been very much in favor of reducing our vehicle registration in the past, but something that's resonated with me very much is a comment that was made at a previous meeting. And then, if you ever read The Alchemist, the signs are there, you just have to follow them. I saw an article earlier this week about, I think it said 25% of Alaska's workforce doesn't live in the state. Here in Kodiak, that is probably higher. And the comment that had been made was, there's an awful lot of people here who use our resources, benefit from our community, and don't pay anything into it. I know because a lot of them leave their vehicles parked where I work. So capturing some of the revenue from folks who otherwise wouldn't be paying any revenue into the borough, I'm not opposed to. That being said, what I don't like about the way this is set up is my fundamental problem with MAPTR in general, which is that it, in my opinion, doesn't force fiscal discipline. It relieves the assembly from our responsibility to determine a mill rate and budget accordingly. Having an automatic reduction in the mill rate every year hides the fact that our property values are up 40% in 5 years. It's great for the taxpayer until situations collide, like trying to address an exorbitantly high vehicle registration fee or trying to meet our obligation to the school district. And then all of a sudden, multiple realities start colliding with each other, and the fact that everybody's homes are worth 40% more than they were 5 years ago becomes a real issue for governmental budgeting. And while very few people's income have probably increased 40% over the same 5 years, as far as the state of Alaska is concerned, we have 40% more capacity to pay for our schools. Probably a little off topic for this, I apologize, but I think this isn't an ice cube tray, it's a dish of spaghetti. All these things touch each other. And not addressing our property tax rate in a deliberate manner is one of the reasons we're in this situation. It's why the manager is so incredibly nervous about the prospect of lowering this fee, because all of a sudden it creates a really uncomfortable situation with the general fund. Thank you.
Thank you. I wrote down, and I'm now circling vicious spaghetti. Mr. Smiley.
Every time we cut taxes, they come back to bite you in the butt. Back when we started the permanent fund, we ended income tax in Alaska, and now the state's broke and is going to have to end up probably reinstituting an income tax, particularly directed at that 1 in 4 people that don't live here anymore. So I'm cautious about trying to cut this tax. And what the manager just told us was that this equates to 0.4 mils. You want to try to raise the property tax by 0.4 mils if you take this one out? Guess what? It's going to be a pain to do that. And we're going to get a lot more grief from that than we will from the current tax on car registration. In addition, we live on an island. We got to have some way of getting rid of all the crap that we bring to this island. And this money helps in a certain, to a certain degree. So I say leave it alone for now. We got other problems that are much more concerning than this one.
Thank you, Mr. Ames, and then Mr. Whiteside.
At this point, in general, I'm in favor for leaving it alone. I agree. If we lower this, we're going to have to get the money from somewhere. Or we're going to have to cut our spending. I mean, there aren't a lot of choices. So it's a matter of what is the best method to generate that money. Another thing I'm going to have to do some research on is we heard a comparison to Anchorage. I believe it's very hard to compare Kodiak to Anchorage. If on the simple fact they have a lot more commercial vehicles. And they have huge trucking companies out of there. So I'm going to have to do a little research and look at places like Ketchikan, maybe Sitka, some other places to see what their rates are, because I think that's much more comparable. I don't like the amount of cost to register a car, but, you know, the money needs to come from somewhere. And no matter where it comes from, someone's going to complain, property tax, whatever. So at this point, I'm leaning towards leaving it alone.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteside.
Thank you. I'll front load with, I have no desire to shift the burden. To me, that's a meaningless exercise to just take the amount of revenue generated from this and just shift it to another portion of our demographic. I think status quo, if that's the case, at least spreads the burden across the community. I would be curious to know how many non-residents actually register vehicles here, though. I would imagine that number's quite low, but I'm pretty ignorant there. But I would be curious to know that. I don't know how we would get that information. We probably couldn't. But anyhow, my point I wanted to get to was maybe thinking about it differently instead of just pulling the lever to off or on. Maybe we think about a dimmer switch type approach to this. So I'm looking at the bond debt service requirements by fiscal year here, and it looks like the fiscal payoff dates for bonds. I think this one is a useful, it doesn't have it, well, it's the last page here. So thinking about a phased out approach, if we were to make a decision to begin phasing this out over time, 2026, which is the year we're in now, we're looking at roughly $9 million, or excuse me, $900,000. I wish it was $900,000 in debt repayment, bond debt repayment. 2027, none. 2028, $1.73 million of bond debt will have been repaid. So if we were to make a decision to taper off on this and have a strategic approach to slowly wean ourselves off of this tax, perhaps looking at a phased approach by bond debt repayment would be appropriate. Looking at, 2028, this is when this could be enacted. A large amount of debt. I assume that could be at any point during that calendar year when this would fall off. But then you look at 2029, another 235,000, and then you get into 2030s, early 2030s, and that's when these big dollar amounts fall off. So if we thought about a phased approach with the goal of this goes away completely, by the time these really big hitters are paid off, that would be my preference. I don't know how much of an administrative burden that would be, but I think even just some general estimates on percentage decrease in tax as bond debt's paid off seems appropriate to me.
Mr. Johnson.
I was just going to suggest, while we're looking at what other communities have for their vehicle registration tax, look at their base mill rate as well. I was recently looking at that, and I was shocked to see that ours has actually gone well below most other communities that I found. I believe Anchorage is a base mill rate between 11 and 18. I think it was Sitka that's around 12. And I could be wrong. I'm going off memory, but I do believe that the reductions in mill rate the last few years have actually put us a little bit below average around the state.
Ms. Williams, did you have?
Alaska taxable.
Taxable?
My brain's not working. 2025, that part I can get right, just came out last month. And so previously I have sent the Assembly 23 and 24, so I'll forward that to Nova, and it has all that listed in it. It's 58 pages, and it compares every municipality, every school borough, to every other one in the state, gives you what their mill rates are, how much sales tax they're collecting. Again, I don't know what's wrong with my... Yes, so I will get that forwarded to you so you can compare all those communities. It's really informational and gives you a really good idea. It shows you who has alcohol tax, who has marijuana tax, who has car rental tax, who's doing accommodation tax. It's everything taxable in Alaska, so it's really great. And I'll send that to Nova right now so she can get it forwarded to you.
Thank you. Is there, and this is my ignorance, is it even legal to tie a tax like a motor vehicle tax to residency? You couldn't call it a tax. You could call it a fee. That look is classic.
I can ask the question. Anytime I've forwarded questions to the motor vehicle office, I have not got any response at all. The previous question was, and I asked it again, I don't know, a month or so ago when this came up, is what if we could get a breakout of the percentage of each year of vehicles that we have here, to see if there's a larger group that has like 10-year-old vehicles versus 5-year-old vehicles. And again, I get nothing back. So I can ask the question. I'll ask the question, but.
Thank you, Dora. So what I'm hearing tonight, I'm not hearing consensus. I'm hearing half say, can I leave it alone, maintain status quo? And I'm hearing from a few others to look at phasing it out over time in proportion to the school bond debt repayments. Jeremiah might break the tie here.
I came here tonight thinking exactly with Carolyn Roberts, and these guys made such good points, and both seemed to hit something right on the head that was a compromise between everything. People want it to go down. We're hurting for money right now. It's hard to take stuff away, and I'm adamantly going to fight against adding tax anywhere, so it's hard. I got to say I side with Bo.
So is it okay to give the manager direction to just create modest rate adjustment scenarios? Oh, sorry, Mr. Whiteside.
So I just did some quick math. It could be wrong because I just clacked it out pretty rapidly here. So going back to my phase-out approach, if we were going to look at the bond debt repayments that will happen in 2026 and 2028, that represents 7% of the total bond debt. Could we reduce it by 7%?
Manager Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That seems like an absolutely reasonable approach. The only heartache that I have with that is not knowing if school bond debt is going to be replaced. Knowing what MAPTR is this year, knowing what the School Act is this year, and and knowing that we need a new roof on East and all the things that that we should be putting into R&R, if we start taking that away and school bond debt is not replaced as it's listed here, like it was not this year, we didn't get 1.8 million of what we should have this year. And so 7% is reasonable, but that has to be made up somewhere. So until I'd say in 2029, when it falls off a clear $300,000, from it's bigger than that overall, but from what we're relying on the state from, then if we don't get that, then that's okay. That would be the year that we could start declining. But it's up to you how much risk you want to take.
Yeah, and that's
Right.
the risk is what they're going to put, what's going to pass the veto or what's going to pass the
Yes.
the committee. So, Ms. Whiteside.
So if I may respond, so in that scenario, and I've mentioned this before, when school bond debt reimbursement is fully paid for, or fully funded by the state, are we going to issue a tax credit?
When we pay school bond debt and we're not planning on it, it gets borrowed or robbed, depending on when you put it, from other funds. When that school bond debt got replaced, it went back to the funds. When we had to pay out, we didn't raise taxes for that. We took interest from our facilities fund. We took money out of the general fund. We took money from all over the place, but taxes were not raised. So there's no tax rebate because we didn't raise taxes. We just put the money back into the funds that we took it from to meet the obligations during those years.
I'm referring specific to the scenario, hypothetical scenario, if we were to reduce the tax levied for DMV registrations by 7%, which would take effect in 2028, and thinking about not doing that, and schools under the reasoning that we need to be risk adverse for school bond debt reimbursement, are we gonna then take that 7% that we didn't give back to the community? Are we gonna give it to them then? It's a rhetorical question for effect. I mean, we're how risk adverse are we being here in our decision making, understanding that we did lose some reimbursement recently, which is causing pause. I get that. But how much are we going to squeeze our community without giving them some relief just for the reasoning of, well, we might not get reimbursement? I struggle with that.
I'm assuming you don't want to answer because you said it was a rhetorical question, so I'm just gonna sit here and bite my tongue. I mean,
Dora, did you have something then?
Right, go Dora.
So there's an annual calculation that I provide the assembly every year when we do budgets. If we have $5 million worth of bond payments due, we get $3 million from the state in reimbursement at 100% or 75% or whatever we calculate it at. We get $720,000 in MVRT. Whatever's left is the mill rate we assigned to debt. Yes. So the next year, if we calculate 75% and we actually got 100%, that's an IRS bona fide debt service fund, which means I cannot keep extra money in there. You'll notice the prior year we actually had $34,000 left in excess in that fund. So that was $34,000 less we calculated to charge the public in that remaining public fee. So I'm not sure what you mean by rebate because there is no extra money left in the fund. Whatever's in there is either used to decrease the rate to the taxpayers the next year for debt service, or if there's a deficiency in the fund, then that's what's extra is charged on top of the debt service for the next year. Is that helpful?
Mr. Whiteside.
All right, I know this is the third bite. So for the public, anyone who's listening or may stream this later, by paying, if I understand this correctly, that's a very good explanation. Thank you. I think framing that is critical to this. I think we've not done a great job of that so far. So if I understand you correctly, Madam Director, by continuing to levy this DMV tax, ultimately the public could save money through the mill rate. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And at what point, if I may just brief follow-up, I
Yes.
know I'm biting a lot on this one, but
As long as nobody else, let me check in with the group first. Okay, you may continue.
yeah, I'm sorry. This is just I just want this some sort of resolution on this one, so I'm trying to be thorough. So at what point then would you not looking for recommendation, but would it make sense for us to revisit this with the goal of getting rid of it back to the rate that folks were paying? I mean, along the bond debt repayment cycle, when would it make sense?
Mathematically, if the MVRT revenues that we plan and the school debt reimbursement we get from the state exceed our debt service responsibility, you could do that. You could decide to shift it back to education support where it came from. I mean, I can just tell you mathematically. I can't tell you politically. That's.
Okay, well, thank you. That was an outstanding explanation. I think the public has been starving for that, so I really appreciate that.
Dora, as you walk away, could you just tell us in 1979 when we voted or when like ordinance passed that said we're doing this instead of an ad valorem tax, what would happen if we went back and did the ad valorem tax?
So, vehicles are personal property, and at the point they decided this, they decided to, instead of having to ascribe a value to the vehicles like every year and charge them tax, which would be the area-wide mill rate tax, they decided just to do a vehicle registration fee instead. So, were we to not have the registration fee, technically, we would have to ascribe everyone a personal property account, just like businesses have personal property accounts. Everybody would have a personal property account, and they would be charged the mill rate for whatever the value of their vehicle would be. This was done so that we didn't have to go down that labor-intensive value ascribing path.
Thank you. So has now the tide shifted a little bit to maintaining the status quo? I'm still seeing, okay. I want to help out Amy as much as we can. Yes, Ms. Roberts.
I think my mind has been swayed a little bit to push the conversation a few years down the road. I don't think it should be forgotten about. I think we should revisit it when the school bond debt is a little bit more clear and we know what's going on with it.
Mr. Smiley.
Wait until I'm off the board.
So now is probably not a good time to ask you about acquiring additional general obligation bond debt. Just saying, like that's an option, but I'll hold that.
Or is there still real interest in, at least just for our own edification, asking staff to just put together some scenarios for us to look at? I'm seeing 4 no's, kind of. I'm not polling. I think the majority consensus that is here right now does seem like to maintain the status quo. But we can always bring this back up and revisit it next year. Okay, let's move on to our next sexy topic of the night, update on the Kodiak Island Borough School District funding request.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought that after Monday's meeting, I was going to have like a whole bunch of new information because I thought we were going to consider school closures and such, but that meeting did not go that way. And so NOVA has included the code, and it shows you that the school district has to have their official request to me by April 30th. They walk over a letter to me and hand it to me and say, here you go, and then I send it to you so you know what it is. But in all of their budget models, they have the max ask at $14,615,403. So In front of you, you'll see this little stapled information. If you're in the audience, there's a whole bunch of copies in the back. If you're, I know Scott has one. Larry's probably like, no thanks. But I just wanted to walk through how we got that so you would understand what that window is. There's 2 steps. One, we find out what the required, so the minimum local contribution is. They take 2 calculations, our full determined value times 2.65 mils, and that's where you get that $6.8 million number. Or you can take the prior year basic need times 45%, and that's where you get the 14.2 million number. You're required to take the lesser one of those. That's the one that's highlighted in blue. The second item is the estimated additional allowable. That's your projected fiscal year 27 basic need times 23%. So the basic need that the school district is using is $33,758,863 times 23% is where we get that 7.7 million number. Or you could take 0.002 of your tax base times the full determined value, and that's the 5 million number. So you take the greater one of those 2 numbers, and that's the pink highlighted number. When we add the blue and pink together, that's where we get the max. So on the bottom there, you'll see your minimum that the borough is required to fund is 6.8 million, and the maximum that we can fund is that 14.6 million. If you turn the page, you'll see I just made a bar graph of our local contribution history from 2021 to 2027. The ask is the orange bar, so you can see what that looks like over the last few years. The next page is the 2-year plan for balancing the budget that was passed at the school board meeting on Monday night. All of the things in the green center column are the fiscal year 27 cuts they're going to make without a school closure. So the school board's plan was to cut $2.7 million of personnel and programs in order to balance their budget. If the borough does not fully fund to that 14.6 million, the blue section on the left that says contingency cuts for fiscal year 27 are just a little over $1,037,000 of additional cuts that they would make if they had to. In yellow, there's some things that they're going to do still this fiscal year, establishing a budget advisory committee so they can track this problem into the next fiscal year for fiscal year 28, where they're going to be required to cut an additional $4 million on top of this out of their budget. Assuming the 2.7, so altogether 6.7 million out of these 2 fiscal years. So lots of cuts. They, in fiscal year 28, that's what you can see on the right. They'll be looking at closing Maine Elementary, closing Peterson Elementary, or closing both Maine and Peterson Elementary to make those cuts. They are looking at partnerships from the city of Kodiak and from Kodiak Area Native Association for helping with some positions, and so we're going to let them hopefully make those contacts. After that, this was new on the website. I'd never seen it before. It's just a few pages if you're interested in how they come up with that basic need. It's a lot of words, but the summary of that is on the page that has the red lines on it. So you can see all of the numbers, the outlines, how many students were in each of the rural schools, each of our road system schools, the middle school and the high school, and then how the formula works for those, how they get to that basic need. That outlines most of those numbers. So those numbers will make sense if you read the 6 pages in front of them. And then that's their calculations on the next page for the min and max windows that I started with. And then the pencil graph, which is a famous graph.
The world famous.
In the Alaskan education system, is just showing what the base student allocation has been from 2016 to 2026. So you can get an idea of the numbers that they're working with. So in agenda setting, the DPO, mayor, and I were talking about this discussion, usually we don't start talking about this until after the joint work session that is going to be held on March 4th this year. Because this is such a jump from last year's contribution of 12.9, going up to 14.6 is a significant amount. So we wanted to talk about it. So we had all the time we possibly could to discuss this. As I showed you a couple of weeks ago, our MAPTR is going to be at about 17.7. So when we have a 14.6 ask, it's going to, so James Turner told me 35% less C products, and James Jackson told me 45% less C products. So we're going to have a significant loss in that revenue this year as well. So when we start considering that stuff, the borough staff knows that as we're building the general fund. We're trying to find where we can make what money we're not using year after year that's just been included. We're getting rid of that and trying to scale back stuff. I think almost every department budget has come in less this year. Nova's significantly than it has the year before. So we're trying to do our part in lowering that, and just wanted to have this in front of you as soon as possible so the discussion could start. Did I miss anything, Mr. Mayor?
Nope, I think that's it. And also, we're starting early because we know exactly the dollar amount that they're asking.
Absolutely.
In the past, we could make some pretty good guesses, but this year, we know.
This is just what it is.
Yeah.
And so the code says they don't have to ask till April 30th, and we've always asked them to wait until April 30th because we thought the state was going to give us some nugget of knowledge that was going to inform our decision and their decision. So last year, maybe we'll know what's going to happen to the BSA or whatever we were waiting, and there doesn't appear to be any chance of any change or new information that we would be getting from the state. So not that we would want to rush the decision, but and we'll discuss it at the joint work session, but it doesn't seem necessary to wait until the last minute for the ask to come in because nothing will change.
Yeah, so for tonight's discussion, I think we have a choice to look at, right? Fund the district at the cap, which is what they're going to be asking for, and identify the trade-off, the service trade-off, the revenue trade-off, suspending MAPTR or cuts, or choose a lower number and be clear about about the impacts that we're accepting. So I think to help us prepare for the joint work session, help you prepare for the joint work session, we put this on the agenda. I'd like us to kind of name our tolerance level tonight, if we can, and give the manager some direction for budget building. I do not want or I would prefer not to have a discussion tonight about the school district, the Board of Education, about their process, about them, about their plan, what you think necessarily about the plan. I would really just like us to think about this discussion about us planning to talk to the school district, for us to kind of calibrate ourselves about what these scenarios mean for us, and to give some guidance to staff. So, what's as a government, what's our priority tonight? Stabilizing schools as much as we can at the cap versus protecting borough services, protecting taxpayers, or some kind of balanced target. Where are we? So first up, Dr. Smiley.
The borough was created to fund the school district. That's why we're here. That's how it started. They've asked for 14.4 or 14.6. But look at the list of what they cut this year. They didn't close the schools that they could have garnered $4 million from. And they didn't do that for a series of reasons, one of which was they didn't feel that they had an idea of how it was really going to go down. But look what they've cut, HR director, 12 months to 11 months, et cetera. I mean, these are real costs. They're real personnel that they're getting rid of. If we don't fund them at the 14.6 level, they're going to have to cut some more. They've got the contingency cuts here that add up to $1 million. I mean, the fact is, the state of Alaska is just underfunding schools all over the place. I believe right now have the lowest support for students from the state of any state in the union. And this has been a deliberate thing on the part of the governor, who has really championed charter schools and homeschooling. And I think there are real concerns about the quality of education in those two forums, because we're not testing the students. They can opt out of the statewide tests, where in the school district, you got to take the tests. So we know what's going on with them. We know that there was a significant hit from COVID in terms of the learning capacity, the amount learned by the students. So I know it's a tough sell to get the full amount, but I support the full amount. And it's probably because I have to live with it every day.
And I should also note too, really quick before we continue, that I am a volunteer coach with the school district for the drama, debate, and speech team. I do receive a $4,000 stipend for that. Mr. Whiteside and then Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. So I've listened to watched, listened, or attended every single meeting leading up to this decision. I wanted to be prepared for this discussion and prepared for this decision because it really impacts everyone in our community. Whichever way we go with the funding, it will affect everyone, whether through loss of services in the borough or loss of capacity in our school system. So I was hyper-focused on this and as up to speed as I could be. The one thing I didn't get out of the decision, Madam Manager, if I may, through the mayor, I don't know where we landed, or where the school district, landed with when they adopted this budget, where the fund balance ended. Did they mention that?
Well, they haven't adopted their budget.
Okay.
They've just adopted this plan.
Okay, so we don't have that
It's not
information.
even a, all right, it's
So
not
we
even
don't
a
have that
riff,
information
I don't think. So
currently?
they haven't
Okay.
even, yeah, so.
Okay, I was just curious. Anyhow, there was a lot of prompts that came from you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with MAPTR. I have no desire to abolish MAPTR. We have a continuing trend about migration in our community. People are getting squeezed. Property valuations and taxes are going high. Inflation's just through the roof. Energy prices just got increased by 15%. Service areas, and it's justified, those rates are going to go up. So we are not creating an environment where we can preserve and grow our middle class. That's what makes a thriving community and economy, is a thriving middle class, and we are pushing people out. Granted, there's other levers we can pull. Lands is not part of this discussion, but we certainly need to get more aggressive with that. But for this discussion, I am not supportive of abolishing MAPTR. But to the ask, I don't know where I'm going to fall on that. I do acknowledge the need is great. I think I am as formed as I'm going to be. I won't know where I land on that without understanding what our threshold is. At what funding amount do we then have a one-to-one trade-off for services and for the rest of the community? This is one of our mandates. I think one thing we need to be clear about, and someone asked me about this morning, is we're required to fund schools, but what does that mean? That means our required local contribution for fiscal year 2027 is $6,850,000 or $865. That is what our mandate is requiring. So I think we should be honest and transparent about that. 6.8 million and some change. That's what we're required to do. I support a much higher amount than that, but I don't know how high I'm willing to go without knowing when that trade-off happens. I'm not willing to reduce services elsewhere in the community. I'm not going to advocate for reducing nonprofit funding. They bring value in many different areas of our community. I'm not interested in reducing staffing in the borough. They are at critically low levels. They provide absolutely critical services to our community. So where does that leave me in my decision-making? I don't know what that number is, but I am supportive of an increase, likely not the full amount if it's going to result in reductions in borough staffing or community services.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple thoughts, kind of echoing what Dr. Smiley said. I read a good analogy, and it's you have a hammer that's really heavy. So you decide that you need a belt to help you carry your hammer. And it's a great belt. You love your new belt. And so you start adding other tools to it. Then the damn belt gets a little too heavy, and you decide to throw the hammer out. That is school funding in the borough and the formation of the boroughs. The borough is the belt, and schools are the hammer. Everything else the borough does is a choice. So when we talk about reduce funding below what the school district asks, and that's, they're all elected to their positions. They all know the same economics and concerns of the community that we do, and they make an ask based on what they're looking at week after week after week with their budget. The comment was made about out-migration. I do agree that is a serious concern. I don't necessarily agree with the causation. I'm looking at jobs outside of the state of Alaska, not because of taxes, because of education in this state. We are the second worst state in the country for education outcomes. We're not going to fix that at the Kodiak Island Borough. As was pointed out, the big celebrated increase in the BSA still puts school districts $1,400 per student below the buying power they had just 6 years ago. So when we talk about this issue, I went and looked at, the chart the manager provided. I would like to politely suggest that the next time we do it at a 0 to budget scale, it makes the bars look a little less dramatic. I overplotted the borough's contribution as a percentage of the cap, because I think that's important to talk about. If we fund the district to the 100%, which is their ask this year, for the last 5 years, the borough will have averaged a 91% contribution. Conversely, between fiscal years 2008 and 2013, the borough averaged a 97% contribution towards the max of the cap. So I've heard it said, I don't recall by who, but it was someone I know I had a lot of respect for, and they say your budget is in a lot of ways a value statement. What do you value? Do we value education as a community? I would say that between fiscal years 08 and 13, we very much did. I think you could argue that we've shown as a value statement, we value it a little less right now, or have in the recent years. So, yes, I will support the district's ask. I certainly hope that we don't have to look at MAPTR. I'll be very interested, having gone through the budget last year, to find when we get our initial report what the difference was between budgeted and actual, and how that changed our fund balance. And if that's what we have to look at for a year to figure out if MAPTR needs to stay on the books, I'd support that. But it's a lot of words to say yes. I'm planning to support the district's ask.
Mr. Gardner and then Mr. Ames.
Just for clarity purposes to the public, I wish that we could give the students everything they ask for. I think I'm going to line up pretty closely with Mr. Whiteside. I can't wrap my head around the student population going down and the ask going up. I can't wrap my head around it. I'm sure there's lots of information that I could be educated on. I do have kids going into the school system. I value education very, very much. My 5-year-old is at a charter school. He goes to the Rock, and they have a bit more of a traditional model. Now, I went to school here when I was a kid. I don't know if all of you did. Most of you probably did. I got an amazing education here. At least I feel like I did. We didn't have all these crazy things the kids have now. Every kid in the school didn't have an iPad. I think that we're going a little crazy in the school with technology. I think we can get back to using chalkboards a little bit. And like I said, I want them to have everything, but I don't think we have it. So I'm going to be in favor of some sort of middle ground for sure. Like I said, I wish we could give them everything. I don't think we can. That's just where I stand.
Mr. Ames.
Well, like everyone, would like to give them everything, and I'm very tempted to. I am a little disturbed in the fact that their 2.7 million cut is about an 18% cut, and yet they need an 11% increase in funding. That just seems like a lot to me. And I do understand that when you lose students, your buildings still have a fixed cost for utilities, heat, water, all that neat stuff that you have to pay. And that's the same number whether you have 400 students in the building or 500, roughly the same number. So therefore, when you drop students and you get less money from the state and whatever, that fixed cost is the same, so you have less money to pay per student. But I really just have a hard time wrapping my head around how you can cut 2.7 million, which, as I said, is just over 18%, and then ask for an 11% increase in funding. I mean, that's a 29% change. Something just doesn't click in my head. And if I'm doing my math wrong, someone please explain it to me. I'm not perfect. But it seemed, the costs seem very amazing to me. And I just don't know how to wrap my head around it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Let me take Ms. Roberts first.
I am extremely torn on this one because, of course, I want to give the school district everything we can and more. However, I think I do, hearing Mr. Whiteside explain, hearing what the effects of that would be on the borough, I think would help me have a better understanding and feel better about making a decision on that. So I think just knowing the effects of us giving the full amount versus a little less or whatever that would look like would make me feel better about that decision.
Mr. Gardner.
I started to say something when I was last speaking about my kid going to the Rock, and one of the things that I notice about over there is, and one of the reasons that I feel like schools cost so much these days is this massive amount of community and parent involvement over at that school. And it's not super cheap, but it's not that expensive. They certainly don't have these resources, and they are killing it with my kid. I love the education he gets over there. So, yeah, I do feel like they could do, they could stand to take a little bit less. And then I wanted to remind the assembly, I can't remember which community member was in here, I believe it was our last meeting, and talking about all the energy waste that's going on over there. And it's pretty extreme. It's one of the things that makes me mad about that school, you know. Heat rises. I don't know why we needed those huge ceilings that were getting heated all year long, and why the cafeteria lights are on when nobody's in there. So I think there's some space for them to save some money too.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to offer a couple thoughts and perspectives on some of the points that have been raised. Most of the public comment we heard last week was about the central office building. That's a borough facility. So if the heat controls need to be fixed so that they have better ability to manage the temperature in there, I do believe that falls on us as the landlord. So I think that might have been a little bit of a red herring in that regard. You know, the question of why is their ask going up when their enrollment's going down, when they're making cuts, again, it goes back to MAPTR. The state's contribution is directly associated with our total assessed value. So as our total assessed value goes up, the state's assumption is that we can afford to contribute more to the district. That's why this number goes up as enrollment goes down. So I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison necessarily to go year to year, especially with, you know, incredibly fast rising valuations. Again, it's why I like the percentage of the cap. The other thing was, you know, I agree with the comment made earlier about the quality of education in this state when I was a kid. If you look at how the schools were funded back then, I think there's probably a pretty strong correlation as to why we received a lot better education than what kids are receiving now. Teachers had a pension plan. I believe the average experience level of a teacher in the 90s when I was a student was somewhere around 16 years. I'm pretty sure it's below 4 now. That was a choice made by our legislature to get rid of the pension program. We're the only state in the country that doesn't offer a pension or Social Security to its teachers. So people come up here, they spend 5 years, they vest their 401k, and they leave, and they bring that experience to another state that gets to benefit from it. You know, the homeschool program called The Rock has been discussed, and it is a wonderful program. I have very mixed feelings because there was really great, what I think was a really great research project done in the, I believe it was late 70s. It ended up resulting in what's called exit, voice, and loyalty. And it was talking about the funding of public schools. And it basically said you have highly engaged parents, you have moderately engaged parents, and low engaged parents. When highly engaged parents are in bad districts and they have the resources, they put their kids in private schools. That's been the way of our country for a very long time. When highly engaged parents have low-performing schools but they don't have the resources, they demand better. When highly engaged parents who don't have the resources have an alternative that gives them an easier option than demanding better, they go for it. And so when you talk about the governor and his push for charter schools and more homeschooling, that's, you know, I don't know if he read it or not, but that's essentially what that does, is it gives highly engaged parents an opportunity to still pursue a quality education for their kids and pulls those voices out of the district. The voices who would otherwise be demanding better for their kids. I realize it's a long diatribe about funding and priorities, but I think it's important context for the situation we're in and why I view it the way I do.
Mr. Whiteside.
Thank you. If I may, through the mayor, for a question for our Madam Manager. Is that, So, Madam Manager, shame on me for not having the best memory. I know this was discussed during more than one agenda-setting meeting. Do we have just a general idea on when we'll have that funding threshold identified where we're going to have to look at a trade-off for other funding needs in the borough? Just in general, just so for the public that's hearing, they can, in the assembly, we can wrap our heads around that.
Our plan is to have you a copy of where we're at on the budget by the work session on February 26th. So that will have service area budgets aren't due in until March 31st. That's not really going to affect the school funding services. So some of those really won't matter So you'll have a copy on the 26th. You'll see that we're asking to have the manager's level 1 budget not due until April 15th. But we'll start talking about that before that's due. So as we make changes, that'll update before you'll even get the level 1 budget. So for those of you that are new, we usually do like 3 or 4 levels of budget. So as we discuss and assembly members ask for changes or we identify things, we'll send out, okay, we're stopping it at this day. Okay, that's the level 2 budget until we get to whatever level we need to get to when we finally vote on it. So they're just called different levels. This first one is like level 0. It isn't really a level. It's not official until that first one comes out in April. But we'd like to be able to start the conversation as early as possible. So that was a really long answer to say February 26th.
Thank you very much, May I continue briefly? Back to my original thoughts on this is I'm well aware of the need because, again, I've listened to every single meeting and know how the district got to where they are. So that I'm pretty firm in that until I know what that funding threshold is. I can't really decide on what the full amount is, acknowledging that the full ask is likely going to be too high without resulting in loss of services or staffing in the borough. So I will be looking for a compromise with the hope that we can go as high as possible before affecting staffing and services.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, like, the assembly is going to have to make some decisions. Usually in tough fiscal years, we choose not to fund R&R. We have a highly operating projects team right now that has projects all the way out to fiscal year 29. So that needs to have some consideration, especially because in the summer of 27, we'd like to put a new roof on East. So we're going to need to make sure that that money is there for that. So, and there is some money in that fund. So it's not, if you don't put any money, we are still getting a roof on East. I don't want to scare any of the people who are East. But that is something that we need to consider. And I think that Mr. Johnson put it really well, that our budget is a value statement. And school maintenance has to be in there somewhere because, yes, it is our job to fund schools, but it's also our job to own and maintain the schools. So I just want to do a little plug for maintenance on the side. I go to the Kodiak collaborative meetings and I stand up and they're just like, yes, Amy, we know maintenance. So they're kind of used to hearing that, but I think that that's really important. And we're going to have to make some, like, how risky are you feel? Like how much risk do you want? We'll give you something, the initial look, assuming that school bond debt is fully funded because that's what's in the governor's budget, right? And so we'll give you that. We just talked about at agenda setting, flat funding nonprofits, flat funding Kodiak College and Library line item for just what they were last year. So we're making some assumptions on something that the assembly is going to have to give us a real number later. But when you get that original budget, those will all be in there. Do you want to talk about what amount you want to see in the school funding line?
Before we get to that,
Okay.
Mr.
Yep.
Smiley had something, because that's substantive, and I just want to make sure we get to Mr.
I just
Smiley.
wanted to explain a bit about how funding works in the school district. It's a royal mess. They don't know what they're going to get, when they're going to get it. There's a count of students in October, which informs the state for the BSA, major state contribution, and they don't even get the money for that until July. It's just a ripoff where they have returns from insurance, which is always a guess, because you don't know how many people are going to need health care taken care of by the insurance, and they're self-insured like most of us are. It's just a royal mess. In addition to that, every year they're audited, and they're audited by the same people that audit us. And we always get top notches for both the borough's auditing system and the school district's auditing system. So there's no cheating going on there. These are real numbers, and they're really a pain to try to come up with. There's also the issue that was raised in the Borough Assembly when I first got on about the fund balance for the school, and people just didn't realize that they were using it as a holding account, so they didn't have to give pink slips in January to all the teachers. they could carry that money in the fund balance and use it as an account for that. So there's a lot of really funky stuff going on there. And the request for the total amount here is one that is tailored for, because of the cuts they made and not closing the two schools, which was one of the close votes on the Board of Education. And that would have been a lot more dramatic, and we wouldn't have influenced the students as much as we are with this budget. Thank you.
Okay, so before we get to Manager Williams' request, which I think is also something that we just should discuss tonight, we've been going for 2 hours. So I would like to take a 5-minute break, if that's okay, and we're going to come back and talk about what's our baseline for manager budget level 0. All right, and we're back from a little break, and we're going to now kind of give as much as we can the manager some direction on some budget building. I gave my direction or 2 cents to Amy to start off with a flat fund, with the status quo, what the borough contributed to the school district last year, and use that as a starting point to build up. I heard a lot of voices say that the cap is tough, but willing to negotiate from where we are. So, another perspective is to start from the ask and put that in the budget and then work backwards. Another perspective would be to go just start off with right in the middle, and then work from there. So I did give Amy direction to go ahead and put in the 12.9, the 12.9 from last year. So that gives us gives y'all an opportunity to define that threshold for yourself. But let's talk. Any thoughts on, yes, Mr. Johnson?
A question, when was the last time the manager's budget did not come forward with the district's ask initially?
Last year when you yelled at me for not doing it would be the last time that I remember. This is only my third, and so I honestly don't remember what I did the first year because I think it was a blur. Dora doesn't remember either. She's just laughing at me in the corner. Last year I put in, I don't remember, but it wasn't the ask. And then it's an assembly, it's a policy decision. So we'll start wherever you want me to start.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a very consistent policy about that, but
I think my preference would be that the manager's budget comes forward with the ask, and if the assembly wants to reduce it, then by all means, a motion to reduce it can be made, and we can then debate and vote on that.
I agree. Mr. Whiteside, and Mr. Ames, and Mr. Smiley. Mr. Garner.
I would offer another perspective in that if we look at mirroring our funding levels from last year across the board for the entire borough budget, including the school district funding, gives us a great starting point to see where we have capacity. So for myself, I view it as a more positive exercise to add to the amount that we provided the school district last year. I think it's a more positive exercise to add to that amount as we identify capacity versus the optics of reducing the amount for the school district ask through the same exercise. I don't really support them just cut it in half because that really, I think, just muddies the waters a little bit. But I think I could go either way, but I think the optics are, from my perspective, more positive to add to an amount than to reduce from it. But it's ultimately it's the same exercise, but that would be my preference.
Mr. Ames.
I was going to say very similar in the fact that, we just need to see we know what the school district's asking. We need to see what the other borough expenses are and decide where we can go from there. Do we stand a chance of being able to fund what they want without seriously cutting borough expenses that need to be spent? And so at this point, which way you do it really doesn't matter because we don't have enough information. I think we ought to look at it with a goal of funding the schools, but keeping an eye on what the borough expenses are going to be to see if that's actually possible. So to me, it doesn't matter which way we start. We just need to crunch all the numbers and figure out where we can get.
Mr. Gardner.
I'm kind of with Bo. I would like to start at last year's contribution, but instead of seeing it as an opportunity to add to that or the optics of it, I kind of look at that as an opportunity to see where we can save money and to work from there. I know, some of my colleagues up here want to give the full ask, and I appreciate it. I wish we could. I think it's better to start at last year and see how we can keep those costs down. It's going to be a rough year for everybody.
Mr. Smiley.
The school district didn't ask for last year's. They asked for this year's. And we should recognize that they have reasons to ask for that amount of money. And if we have to cut, we have to cut. But we have to be there with them and try to understand why they made the requests that they made. Thank you.
Mr. Whiteside.
Again, I could go either way, but excluding the middle, cutting it down the middle to begin with approach. But I guess one thing thinking about that perspective just presented to us is the ask has been made. I agree. We know what that amount is going to be. Well, the ask hasn't been made yet, but we know what it's going to be most likely. But with that also comes, if we don't then ask for all of the departments and other areas that we fund in the borough, we don't know what that ask is going to be. So we're not uniform in our thought process there. So we don't know what Parks and Rec's going to look like. We don't know what R&R funding is going to look like. We don't know what department funding needs are going to be yet. So I think if we're going to be uniform in the exercise, I still think starting with last year's, mirroring that over, puts every single budget item or category on the same playing field. But to me, it's cleaner. It's more uniform going that approach.
Mr. Ames.
I'm actually going to support starting with their asking price, because the reality is all the departments are asking for a new number also, and we're starting with that number. So I think to be uniform, if all the departments are asking for a new number and we're working from that, then we ought to put in the school's asking number and work from that. We're not asking the departments to put in last year's number and see what else we can get them. So I think it's appropriate to put in everybody's new number and then see where the numbers land and what we can do.
All right, so even, well, let me ask, Ms. Lawrence, did you have anything before I come back to Mr. Whiteside? Okay, oh.
No, I agree with everyone.
Yeah.
I'm like the little sister of the family, and I have to meet everyone in the middle. I understand starting with last year's budget because or the ask from last year, because we're not going to go below that. I don't see us giving them less than we did last year, so I understand starting at what we gave them last year. But I also don't like starting at the 14 because, like Mr. Whiteside said, I don't like taking away from that. I guess either way.
And that's fine too.
Yeah, either way is my stance.
Mr. Whiteside. Oh, okay. Well, I'm getting a sense that with either like the ambivalence and then the strong opinions, that to start with the ask is, I think, is overall the consent. It's not really quite consensus, but I think that's where the majority of the consensus is. And I think I do agree with Mr. Whiteside about, yeah, it's the optics. It's tougher to take things away, but if everybody is giving us their number, then we'll be trimming from everyone. And so
So I've instructed my department directors to give me a budget that, like, what can't you live without? And so if I give you what can't you live without, and the school district gives you all, and then you're like, oh, we need to take away from the borough, like the incentive is going to be to, add a little so you have something to take away. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to change our methodology on what we're going to do. So when you get the budget from us, it's going to be what we think we need to run the borough. And then there'll just be policy decisions like, okay, we're not going to have money to redo a park. We're not going to fund nonprofits. So sorry, Kodiak College, you're not going to get, like whatever that is. With most departments, it is salaries and like printing, binding, telephone. There's not stuff in there that can be removed unless you remove people. That's the only way to make those departments go down. So I just want to tell you up front that we're not going to do the used car salesman thing here. We're just going to, like, this is what the borough needs to run. Okay. The clerks have to do some travel in order to keep their qualifications up. Like, there's stuff that we just cannot take out. But my goal is to give you something that's as low as we can go. I don't need $3,000 in my office supplies item when I've spent like $19 this year because I just buy what I want, right? So that can go out. But when it comes to like finance and assessing and community development, it's just people. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to cut that out, that's jobs. Okay, that's all.
No, thank you for that, Mr. Gardner.
I just want to say, in light of that comment, I am really strongly saying that we should start with last year's as a place to come from that we can add to.
Mr. Whiteside.
I agree with Mr. Gardner.
Ms. Roberts.
I also agree. I think if they're giving us bare bones, then we need to do the bare bones for school district too.
Mr. Johnson.
I'm going to offer that we have bare bones from the district. They've cut 19 staff in this budget. So should we tell the borough to cut the same percentage of their staff? I wouldn't support that, but again, their ask increasing is a function of assessed value, not them trying to grow their budget. And so I think it's again, not an apples to apples comparison to say, well, they're asking for more and we're not going to cut when the obligation of the borough has grown because of the increase in values.
Mr. Ames.
Well, I was going to say basically the same thing, that the school district at least says they are asking for their bare bones. They're not being extravagant. So I'm in favor of everybody just starting with this year's requests, and we got to figure out how to make it work. And there's going to be probably some headbutting, but until we know the numbers, we don't even know what the headbutting's going to be about. So let's see a proposed budget, see the real numbers, and see whether there's a shortfall or some miracle we can do it all. And so that's my opinion.
I believe you have to break the time, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, jeez. I'm going to do what?
Breaking the tie of your non-polling.
I'm not of the non-polling. So I'm going to change course, and like I said before, request the manager to start with the ask, and we'll work from there. I think that's a reasonable policy decision to make. Okay, moving on. Unless there's anything else that anybody has about getting ready for the joint work session and talking about this with the school board. Mr. Whiteside.
Not relative to what we just wrapped up there, but I think it'd be helpful for all of us to know what is or is not appropriate to discuss during that joint work session. And when would we want to, I guess, point out what topics are appropriate, decision-making. This is useful information that I did not get my first meeting with them, and I upset a lot of people.
That's actually a really good question, and I'll open that up to the wisdom of the assembly, especially Mr. Johnson, who has been on the other side of that table. But obviously, I think it'd be inappropriate to get into causation about the situation that we're in. That is literally the definition of chaos theory. Chaos theory is not about the effects of the butterfly wings. Chaos theory is actually about trying to discover why the butterfly flapped its wings in the first place. We will go crazy and waste a lot of time. This is where we're at, and so so I would not like to go down that rabbit hole. I don't think it's also appropriate for us to make or to suggest, as your function as assembly member, to suggest cuts or to suggest revisions to their plans. We, the Borough Assembly, we do not earmark money. We do not tell the school district what to do with the contribution. We cannot. That's not our job. That's not our charge. That's not our responsibility to build those expectations from them. I think what we can do is talk about what. Well, I think I'll hold off on that. It's appropriate to ask about facilities. Maintenance schedules.
I think it would be very appropriate for an assembly member, and we do have one assigned, but maybe an assembly member who would be able to attend those advisory board meetings of the advisory board they're going to set up for next year, and for the assembly to play a more active role and ask questions about maintenance numbers and stuff. This year, when they talked about school maintenance, they just used the form from last year, so it had North Star on it. It wasn't reflective of like real data that they could have had this year, and so if there was someone with a voice on that advisory board, sitting in the audience, you can see those things, but you can't, like I couldn't ask. But I think it would be really great to have an assembly, someone on there that was able to talk about the impact of closing Maine versus closing Peterson and what that would be to the borough and what, how long do we think it would take for the Coast Guard to eat Peterson, or what we could possibly do with Maine in the future. Just have someone there that's speaking the voice of the impacts of what that decision will be afterwards, because we really haven't had that ability. So if they're making that advisory board, which it sounds like as early as next month, I think that would be really great to have a voice on there.
Mr. Smiley.
I agree that would be a good thing. However, discussion of closing schools or not closing schools during the joint meeting, I think that's off the table, really.
I totally agree that they've
that's their
gone
decision.
this path to not do that this year, and so that's very weird for one elected board to tell another elected board what to do.
There are two things I think that are of concern. One is the cost that they've borne with the pool, which is $100,000 this year, which is a big pile of money. And the other is the auditorium, which was taken out of the school district by a previous superintendent and is not considered and doesn't get support from the state at all because it's not part of the school districts anymore. And both of those things, I think, should be discussed in the joint session.
Mr. Whiteside.
Thank you. So one thing I struggle with, and one of the reasons I asked you this question is, and this question has been asked to me several times since the most recent meeting where this plan, not budget, but plan was adopted by the school board, is, and I've heard two members of the board communicate that they are openly communicating to the public to bring this strategy to us. And you can go watch the meetings. This is something they are advocating for, to bring this list to us and say, if you don't give us this, you are making us cut these. Now, to me, that's challenging for me to listen to that if I can't challenge their decision-making and how they got there. So someone asked me directly, and I don't want to go too far with this, but this is a very great example of, I guess, the imbalance here. In that someone asked me, well, if they're choosing to cut this and they're going to put that pressure on you to make that decision, I can't say anything about, no, you are choosing not to cut sports. I'm not choosing to cut this. You chose to cut this. Instead of cutting sports, travel, preserving fund balance. So there's an imbalance there in the discussion. And so I think it's extremely unfair for those kind of statements to be made to us, to apply pressure to us if we can't challenge their thought process. I'm okay with not any of that being discussed, but it's going to happen. And it's extremely imbalanced.
Mr. Gardner.
It's going to be my intent to try to save money in almost every action that we do up here. And I guess I'm confused how we're supposed to walk back from their asking number if it's inappropriate to talk about cuts or places that we can save money. Sounds like we're going to have more financial information in front of us on what we have available as we approach this. And, you know, I tell people all the time, you might want X, but we have Y in our checking account, and that's it. There's not imaginary money somewhere. If there is, let me know how to get to it, and let's give it all to the kids. That sounds great. But I just don't know how we're supposed to walk back from the bigger number if that's where we start, and it's inappropriate to talk about walking back.
I don't think it's inappropriate to talk about, walking back. But I think my point was, they went line item by line item by line item, and I don't think that's our job to say, why did you do this line item instead of this other line item? Because they have spent the past 2 months in 6-hour-long meetings, and they've already discussed all of these things, and I would like us to be prepared. And not relitigate things that they've already litigated themselves. I think it's a waste of time, and it's not productive, because we have, I think, bigger decisions to make. So I think that was my point. I don't think it's productive to question motivations, really. I guess, and that's just the Virgo in me or the pragmatist in me. I just like to let's talk about the effects, of some of these decisions, and I think that's totally fine. But getting into the weeds, I have absolutely zero interest of getting into weeds. I think that was the essence of my point. Mr. Ames.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's always been my understanding we aren't supposed to get into the weeds. We aren't supposed to do any of that, except go to meetings as a private citizen. As an assembly member, we are not allowed to tell them how to spend money. We just decide how much they get. And they are a totally separate board that gets to decide how to spend that money. Am I wrong? Let me ask.
I don't think you're wrong, but we are Central Treasury, and they are a subunit of us. And in other communities across the state where their budgets haven't gone check, Ketchikan had to pay the teacher salaries at the end of last school year, because the school district ran out of money. Our school district is much more conservative than that, and I don't ever see a problem with that. I called Cindy that day that I found out the Ketchikan Borough Assembly had to pay the teachers, and just said thank you, because they don't cut it that close, and I think that's
Ketchikan's in a mess.
And then on the other hand, Fairbanks just found $11.4 million that they didn't know they had, so our school districts are kind of all over the place.
Yes, keep going, Mr. Ames.
Well, I guess it goes along that same thing. We're not allowed to tell them, but somehow we should be able to say you have to guarantee you're paying teachers because that you've hired for that year. Not take money out, spend it in other places, and then say, oh, bro, by the way, we're short, give us more.
I'm sorry I even brought that up. That was just, it just happened once in Ketchikan, and it was an unfortunate situation, but it just gave me a new appreciation for how stuff was done in Kodiak. We've never been close to that. They've used a lot of their fund balance and done that, but they've never made it so that they weren't going to be able to pay teachers. I'm sorry I said that out loud.
Mr. Whiteside.
Thank you. So, I guess, and I agree, but it's not my place to tell them how they would spend the funding they receive, but I would expect the same courtesy coming from the other end. I agree. I've had a very unsatisfying experience in this area. I will be very objective and focused on the dollar amount. I think that is, they clearly have probably put over 100 hours into this, so they put the time in. But I would expect the same courtesy on their end to be objective and not use guilt tactics, or if you don't, then this. I think that's a cheap tactic. It's unfair to the assembly to make an objective decision. So I'm happy to not question their decision-making process, but I expect the same courtesy.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. Mr. Johnson?
I do. I understand and appreciate the perspective. I have a little bit different one. You know, maybe I'm too idealistic, but I like to think of it more like, you know, hey, here's cards on the table. Here's our situation, and here's where we're at. If we go below this, then this is what we'll have to do. You know, I don't see it as an empty threat. It's just reality. If that's not funded, then these are the consequences. Now, our counterpoint is if we have the budget numbers available by then, if that budget ask is met, then these are our consequences. That is a perfectly reasonable position as an assembly to take. Arguing over which cut is warranted versus isn't, I think is where we need to avoid going.
Very rich discussion. I'm very appreciative of all of you up here for this. Let's move on. Okay. All right, our final item for the work session is to discuss mayoral appointments to the Cook Inlet Regional Citizens Advisory Council, Southwest Alaska Municipal Council, and the Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Council, which you will be approving in hopefully just a few minutes. So how it sits right now is based on the forms that you filled out earlier back in, I think, November. It's my intention to keep Manager Williams on the Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Council. And would you like to? Well, I'll just go through these, and Amy, I'll give you a chance to speak to that. I was intending to appoint Dave to the Cook Inlet Regional Citizens Advisory Council. There is also a citizen who has announced their interest in the seat also. But my initial appointment was for Mr. Johnson to sit on that, but that's something for you to consider too. And then for the Southwest Alaska Municipal Council, Swampsea, I've been on that board for a few years. I kept my name on there, but there's interest from Mr. Gardner, and I think there was a little bit of initial interest with Mr. Whiteside on that one too. So I think I'd like to open it up. Let's start with the Prince William Sound one, Amy. Why is it important we keep you on that seat?
Why is it important? Well, it took me about a year and a half just to learn the other 26 people that are on that board. I do remember when we were first discussing me going on, and there was interest from Rebecca Skinner to stay on, and one of the things that she said is that it's just such a robust committee, and I take my words back when I was like, oh, how hard can it be? It really is a lot. A lot of people on the board have been on there since OPA 90 was invented and the council was invented. I have established a place. I'm on the Long Range Planning Committee. I'm on the Information and Education Committee. And it is a bright spot in being the manager that costs the borough zero money. So it's a travel and go learn new things and meet new people with no expense to the borough. So it's kind of a nice perk of the job at this point.
Thank you. Any discussion on that appointment? Okay. Next, Dave, would you like to speak about your interest in Cook Inlet Advisory?
I'm interested in doing it, so that's
okay. Any further discussion on that one? Okay, we'll move on to Swampsea then. Yep, I don't want to say I've put in my time with Swampsea. I've really enjoyed my time on Swampsea, and making those connections down the chain and Dillingham. And really learning, it's through Swampsea that I learned a lot about the transportation issues that are, I mean, really, really bad. And I've been part of the board that has, we're going to be revealing a transportation, plan and our own economic development. It's less of a municipal council than an economic development, regional economic development council. But I am absolutely more than willing to pass it on. I would love to stay on it also, but if I could take one thing off my plate, Jeremiah, you've expressed some interest also.
Let's see. I was born in Anchorage in '84. My family moved to King Salmon in '86. My dad was the senior officer for Department of Environmental Conservation. So in a way, throughout the 80s and the 90s, he was kind of in charge of fisheries from the processor side throughout that entire region. My mom was also the manager for the Lake and Peninsula Borough, which services 17 different villages out in that area. Their main office is in King Salmon. I feel like I have a lot of connections throughout that area. I know some people that are already on that board or committee, and I think I'd be good at it. But I also acknowledge that Mr. Whiteside is more experienced than I, so I won't be offended if it goes some other sort of direction. And same thing for Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, that's it.
And I should also mention, they do have monthly meetings Thursdays during the day, usually in the morning on Thursdays. And then it's important we get someone now because the Economic Forum, where they vote in the new members, is here in a couple of weeks. But were you still interested? I know I kind of stacked you with committee assignments. And so I am leaning a little more towards, I think, appointing Mr. Gardner just to balance the load between assembly members.
Sure. So still interested, but I will defer to the wishes of the assembly. So before I make my reasoning for going for that, I advocate for anyone who is pursuing any of these to continue on the pathway of discussing items with the assembly before attending any of these. What do you plan on discussing on behalf of our community? And then, equally important, what did you bring back? I have a serious distaste for people using borough funds and borough time to go to these meetings, and we don't know what they're going to talk about, and we don't know what happened. What was the value in that for the community? So anyone who makes these appointments, congratulations. Please work towards that. My interest was economics, trying to identify what strategies for getting coastal communities or small communities in Alaska to get the trajectory at least flattened, if not increasing. I think we're really struggling with that here. We've had study after study, different organizations. We struggle for tangible strategic planning on how we can truly improve our economy here. I will say this over and over again. How are we going to preserve and build our middle class? So that's my main motivation there. I have a strong background in economics, budgeting, grants, which I think Mr. Gardner sells himself short as a business person, brings a completely equitable skill set with a different viewpoint. So I think that's equally important for this type of exercise in this body. Obviously, the current appointee, the mayor, very skilled in these areas as well. So there's benefits in longevity and continuity.
Yeah.
I guess continuity is a better way to put it. A lot of effort goes into this. It's not a very lengthy appointment when you consider how long it takes to identify and develop and implement an initiative. Like strategic planning takes years sometimes. So I think there's value in that. I'm happy to do it. I understand what it is. I have the capacity to do it, both time-wise and I think skill-wise, but I think all three options are great. That doesn't give you a whole lot.
Yeah, no. So I think unless there's, oh, yes, Ms. Williams.
Sorry, I was also on that board for a few years, and when it comes time for board seats, there's at-large seats. And so if there are people who are able to go to the conference, unfortunately, it does overlap our joint work session and with the school district and another work session, right? Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, I know I'm missing something. But also Swampsea has their own comprehensive economic development strategy, which they are always seeking input in. So anyone who's interested and doesn't make the seat, that's a really good way to put your input for the area in. I think Juanetta or whoever,
Yeah,
the executive
Juanetta,
director.
yeah.
I know that is now, but it
Oh,
just changed a lot, right? Always struggles getting input, so that's a really good way. And the at-large seats, we've had several Kodiak people on that. Kodiak is like the big city
Oh, yeah.
on this. Instead of being the small guy that no one pays attention to, everyone looks at us and they're like, wow, you have everything, right? So, I mean, because we do compared to some of those smaller villages and stuff. And so it's a really neat perspective on how good we really have it. When we think we're remote, we just aren't in that world. And so, but that, I think there is a possibility for other at-large seats if people are interested in going for some of that.
Yes, right now Darren Muller from Uzinki is sitting on the Kodiak at large, and I believe his term is up next. I think it's 2027 for Darren. Yeah, Bo.
Mr. Mayor, by continuing, if you were to continue with this appointment, what would be your primary initiative that you would be focusing on for our community?
Hands down, transportation. I mean, the economic implications, the climate implications. I mean, it's huge for us. But then when you think about what transportation is like down the chain, yeah, it's bad. We have, I think, a very robust transportation forum every year. At the conference, and unfortunately, a lot of the transportation policies is kind of focused on Southeast and then the rail belt, right? We are the weird kids next door, you know, tearing off heads off of Barbie dolls. They don't think about as much. But so, man, advocating for a more sincere and robust transportation plan. And then I think the second thing is the military buildup in Southwest is ramping up. And so we talk about economic opportunities. We're trying to understand what that means. And then of course the fishery troubles, that's definitely hitting. Swampsea does not get into fishery policy, but they do focus on just the economic impacts. That's where they lie. I'm currently the treasurer of the board, and I know there's some kind of succession. I'm supposed to then be vice president next year, and then the president after that, but Jared ain't got that much time. It's so serious. I'm starting to refer to myself in the third person. And so that's why, I'm actually, based on what you said, Bo, I don't know if you intended to talk yourself out of it, but you mentioned longevity, and with Mr. Gardner here, he's got 3 years, and that was a sufficient time for me to build those relationships out too. But anyway, you're about to.
Yeah, if I will, for reasons, both your reasons that you have both stated, remove myself from potential appointment with a strong preference for exploring how we can get our arms around some infrastructure spending as a we truly are a defense community. So I think that's a spot we cannot stop squeaking on. There's a lot of money out there to be had. My brother knows the person who is in control of all of that funding for the Coast Guard right now. So I was able to ask him directly, how can we get our hands on that? And he gave us some suggestions, but we've already pursued several of them. But anyhow, there's a lot of money out there. We have to find a way in to not just advocate for, but to solidify our community as a defense community, because there is a lot of opportunity for capital if we can get that designation. So I think whomever of you two it ends up being, I think you should make that one of your top 2 priorities.
Yeah, I think Swampsea is starting to latch on to the, now it's almost kind of cliche, gateway to the Arctic, you know. I think it was someone from the city who mentioned that in a forum at AML, and there were a lot of laughs about that. Okay, so I think I will then formally nominate Jeremiah, Mr. Gardner, for Swampsea. So that's the slate. Amy for Prince William, Dave for Cook Inlet, Jeremiah for Swampsea, and then we'll vote on them here in a few minutes. All right, coming to the end of, we still have a meeting. We still have another meeting. Sorry. All right, clerk's comments.
I'm not going to read my report. You have it before you, but if I could announce, please, we're getting ready for Board of Equalization in May, and we are missing one person on the board. And if you could help us find a person that we can appoint to that board, that would be great. For the listening public, if you're interested, please fill out the application online. The qualifications are they need to be appointed on the basis of their expertise in real and personal property appraisal, the real estate market, the personal property market, and other fields related to their functions as board members. So we're looking for a member to that board. We're missing one. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Nova. Assembly member comments. We'll start down at the end with Ms. Roberts.
No comment.
Mr. Whiteside.
No comment.
Mr. Ames.
No comment.
Mr. Smiley.
No comment.
Mr. Johnson.
No comment?
Mr. Gardner.
Well, I'll comment. Nova, thanks for getting me coffee. Appreciate you as always. And I just wanted to say that was a great, robust conversation all the way around. I know I don't always see eye to eye with all of you, but every time one of you talks, you always have something of value, and I notice it, and you change the way that I want to react to just about everything. So I'm listening to you. I'm negotiating with you, whether you see it or not, and I appreciate all of you.
Thank you. Mayor's comments, just that next week I'll be out Winter AML with Manager Williams and Mr. Johnson. The week after that, I'll be out for a few days, so I'll miss that work session on the 26th for the Drama Debate and Forensics State Tournament. I think we're going to kill. And then I'll be out the following week for the Swampsea Economic Forum. And then after that, God, I hope I'm home for a long, long time. After that. And don't forget about the joint work session. And I'll be calling into the joint work session with the school board. Okay, we're adjourned, and we'll take just a couple of minutes.
Yes, if I could have 5 minutes.
5 minutes, all right, we're going to, 5 minutes.